Chris Canty was a very good player in the National Football League for a very long period of time. He played 11 seasons in the NFL, and he won Super Bowl 46 with the New York Giants. And it's very likely that the Giants do not go on that playoff run and do not have the success that they had in 2011 without Canty manning the defensive line. I bring that up because as good as he was as a player, my God, he sucks as an analyst. Welcome, everybody, to JG9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Garnay, representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about defensive lineman Chris Canty, who is now an analyst on the radio for ESPN on a show called Unsportsmanlike that also airs on ESPNU. Now, a few days ago, there was a ranking done of the top 5 fan bases in the National Football League, and the list had one of the hosts picking the Pittsburgh Steelers as the number 1 fan base, and the Cleveland Browns were not on the list. Evan Cohen had a problem with the Browns not being on the list. He's another one of the hosts on the show, and he brings up really great points. It's easy to be a Steelers fan because of the success they've had. The Browns have been terrible, and the fans still love them. The Browns had their team ripped away from them, and they still supported them all the way. There has not been a lot to cheer about in Cleveland over the last 50-some-odd years, and yet Browns fans keep showing up and keep being incredibly loyal. It was your standard debate in terms of who's the best fan base in the NFL. You know, the typical thing that happens during the doldrums of the offseason where not a whole lot is going on. But then in the middle of this argument by Evan Cohen, Chris Canty had to interject and say that the Browns did not have a top 5 fan base in the NFL because, in the eyes of Chris Canty, they lost their team because of lack of fan support. Seriously, remember when the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore? Turns out, according to Chris Canty, that was because of a lack of fan support. Take a listen.
The Cleveland Browns fans are the single best fans in the entire league. There is no fan base that is better than the Cleveland Brown fan. The Cleveland Brown fan had their team removed from their city and still somehow supported the team that when they came back, they were selling out every single game.
But if the fans were so good, then why did the team leave Cleveland?
Oh, no, we're not going to do that because that doesn't have anything to do with it a lot of the time. It's about money. It's about greed.
Thank you.
But that wasn't the case the first time when the Browns left. That wasn't the case.
But, okay, so
that wasn't the situation.
Any way you cut it, though. They come back.
All right, for Chris Canty to suggest that the Browns moved because of a lack of fan support is absolutely shameful when that couldn't be further from the truth. In 1994, the average attendance across all 8 games for the Cleveland Browns at home was 69,948. That was the 5th highest average in football. The only teams better than them were the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the New York Giants, and the Denver Broncos. Look at this chart right here. Tell me that the Browns moved because of lack of fan support. The average attendance was over 70,000 in 1993. Look at this chart right here. They were number 5 in the league in fan support. Again, not the reason they moved. And look at here in 1992, again, over 70,000. They were actually 4th in the NFL in average attendance that season. So again, you can't say it was because of lack of fan support. The average attendance from 1985 to 1994 across the entire league was somewhere in the ballpark of 60,000 fans. The Browns were well above that every single year. Here's a look at every year-by-year attendance over that 10-year stretch for the Cleveland Browns, and they were routinely inside the top 5. Now, for 1987, I only counted the 6 regular games they played with actual players. I'm not counting the strike game that they had in 1987 because that skews the averages for every team. So I'm only counting the regular games that they played with regular players. But you get the idea. It was not because of lack of fan support. It was very obvious that it's not because of lack of fan support. Canty is lying out of his butt with this. There's an entire Wikipedia article on the Browns relocation controversy. There was an entire documentary produced by your own network, by ESPN, on the Cleveland controversy, where the Browns moved to Baltimore. It had nothing to do with fan support. There was never any mention of fan support in there. If anything, fan support was the one thing that was keeping the Browns afloat. The reason why they moved was because Art Modell couldn't get a stadium, and Cleveland Municipal Stadium was becoming run down, and Cleveland gave the Cleveland Indians a new stadium for baseball, but they did not give the Browns a new stadium for football. All you have to do is a simple Google search. You have a smartphone, you have a computer, just Google, why did the Browns move to Baltimore? And the first thing that pops up tells you the reason. You don't have to dig very hard. You just have to do a 2-second Google search, and it tells you it was not because of lack of fan support. It was because they couldn't get a stadium. So to insinuate that it was because of a lack of fan support and then double down on it while being corrected by everyone else who is telling you that you're wrong and that it's factually incorrect is nuts to me. It's absolutely nuts. And it's a general problem with society, with people loudly speaking about things that they clearly do not know anything about. It's almost like this hypothetical. Someone says that John Smith is the best player in the history of UAB. I'm making up the name John Smith, but let's just say he played for UAB during the mid-2010s. And then someone says as an argument, that can't be true. If he was so good, then why did he transfer out of the program due to a lack of playing time, even though he transferred out during the period where UAB literally did not have a football team? He did not transfer out because of a lack of playing time. He transferred out because UAB's football program folded. And again, John Smith is a pure hypothetical player in this situation, but you get the idea. It's very wrong. That statement is incredibly wrong. And for Chris Canty to say that wasn't the case the first time when the Browns left, the first time? What do you mean the first time? Does he think the Browns left multiple times or something? Does he think the Browns just move every 20 years and the first time they left, it was because of lack of fan support? They moved because they couldn't get a stadium. It was not because of fan support. They were one of the top fan bases in football. They were drawing in the top 5 every single year before they moved. If the Browns left the first time due to a lack of fan support, then riddle me this, Chris Canty, riddle me this. Why did the NFL immediately promise to give them a team a few years later once they got a stadium? Because you know what? That seems like really bad business for the league. That seems like a terrible idea. If the fans weren't showing up in Cleveland, the fans didn't care about their team, let's immediately reward a franchise again to that team and to that city. Let's immediately give them a second chance, even though they didn't care the first time, because that makes total sense. That makes total sense, Chris Canty. Thank you for talking out of your butt on this. And again, we can differ on opinions in terms of who the top fan bases are in the NFL. One person had the Browns as number 1. Another person didn't have them inside the top 5. We can debate on that. That is purely subjective. We can all have different opinions. That's the beauty of this country. That's the beauty of sports talk radio and sports shows. Sports shows would be incredibly boring if we all had the same opinions. Embrace debate. There's a big reason why that's a thing. If we're all just agreeing with each other, no one would watch, no one would listen. You want to embrace debate. I totally get that. I have no problem with the list of not having the Browns inside the top 5, and I have no problem with Evan Cohen putting the Browns at number 1. That's not the issue here. The issue, though, is when you lie. The issue is when you misrepresent the truth and make up stuff like saying that the Browns moved because they had no fans and they lacked fan support, when obviously, if you just Googled it for 1 second, that could not be further from the truth. So, Chris Canty, here's my advice to you. Next time you speak, make sure you know what you're talking about. If you're getting paid to talk for a living, you better know what you're talking about, because clearly here you did not. And to interrupt Evan Cohen's argument and interrupt a great conversation and a great debate by derailing it with something that clearly was not true and you clearly did no research on and clearly know nothing about is shameful. It's absolutely shameful. So, Chris Canty, the Browns did not move because of a lack of fan support. Hopefully you realize that now and realize the error of your ways, but 'tis better to remain silent than to speak and remove all doubt that you're a fool. But what are your thoughts on this situation? What are your thoughts on Chris Canty as an NFL player? Do you agree with his comments that the Browns moved because of a lack of fan support, even though it's very obvious that they did not move because of that reason? What are your thoughts on the debate of the top 5 fan bases in the NFL? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that is going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jaguar9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jaguar9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.